active duty check-in is right here.
Okay.
That is a spectacular truck.
Oh, thank you very, very
You're
much.
looking good.
You look very handsome in your, it's nice and
We got photographs.
It's one of our former sea cadets in that brief.
Hello, Karen.
How are you?
I'm fine. I do remember you, yes. Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so
How are you doing?
How are you doing?
Nice to see you here. Good to see you. Checking in?
We're checking in.
She's one of our Navy recruiters.
Yeah. Nice to meet you.
He's on our board with us.
Okay.
There you go. Your drink tickets?
Okay.
Your table. Have a great evening.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, you may. Santa Barbara Navy League coin. And for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
How was that? Have a good night. Thank you.
It's great to be here, Jack. You and I are the two best looking guys in the room.
My name is John Blankenship, and I'm the chairman of the board of the New York Licensed Veterans Museum and Library Foundation. I have the great honor of welcoming you tonight to the 14th annual New York Licensed Military Ball.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming? As you entered the banquet hall this evening, you might have noticed the small table in the place of honor. It is set for one. This table is our way of symbolizing the fact that members of our profession of arms are missing from our midst. They are commonly called POWs or MIAs. We call them brothers. They are unable to be with us this evening, and so we remember them. This table is set for one, and it is small, symbolizing the frailty of one prisoner alone against his oppressors. Remember, the tablecloth is white, symbolizing the purity of their intentions to respond to their country's call to arms. Remember, a single red rose displayed in a vase reminds us of the families and loved ones of our comrades in arms who keep the faith, awaiting their return. Remember, a red ribbon is tied so prominently on the vase, is reminiscent of the red ribbon worn upon the lapel and breast of thousands who bear witness to their unyielding determination to demand a proper accounting of our missing. Remember, the candle. The candle is lit, symbolizing its upward reach of their unconquerable spirit. Remember, a slice of lemon is on the bread plate to remind us of their bitter fate. Remember, there is salt on the bread plate, symbolic of the family's tears as they wait. Remember, The glass is inverted. They cannot toast with us this night. Remember, the chair. The chair is empty. They are not here. Remember. Remember, all of you who served with them and called them your brothers, who depended upon their might and aid and relied upon them, for surely they have not forsaken you. Remember. Remember until the day they come home. Remember.
Good evening, everyone. The Marine Corps celebrates its birthday on the 10th of November every year. We do this in honor of those who have gone before us, in honor of those who are currently serving, and in honor of those who are going to come ahead of us. Whether the Marines are in Afghanistan, if you're aboard ship sailing the Mediterranean or the Pacific, if you're in a hangar in Iwakuni, or if you're at a birthday ball, this message is read from the Commandant every year. Allow me to read it. 60 years ago, the United States Marine Corps, as it has throughout our history, demonstrated its vital role as America's expeditionary force in readiness. Just weeks after North Korean Communist forces crossed the 38th parallel, the 1st Marine Provisional Brigade landed in South Korea, forming the backbone of the perimeter around the city of Busan. The efforts of the Fire Brigade, as they were known at Busan, allowed for the daring amphibious landing at Incheon and set the stage for one of the most savage campaigns in our Corps history, the Chosin Reservoir. As we pause to celebrate our 235th birthday, we pay special tribute to the Marines of the Korean War and recognize their contributions to our enduring legacy. This past year marked the end of the Marine Corps combat operations in Iraq. Beginning with the invasion in March 2003 and through the next 7 years of fighting, our Corps acquitted itself valiantly in the Anbar province and throughout the country. Locations such as Fallujah and Ramadi have taken their place in the illustrious battle history of our Corps. Our efforts in defeating the insurgency help to build a brighter future for all Iraqis. For 235 years, at sea and ashore, Marines have succeeded in every clime and place, where hardship and adversity have often been the common thread. Today in the rugged mountains and valleys of Afghanistan, and recently in earthquake-damaged Haiti, in flood-ravaged Pakistan, and off the coast of Africa, we continue to protect our nation just as we did 60 years ago in Korea. To the Marines and sailors deployed overseas, to those training and preparing for their next deployment, and to the warriors who no longer wear our uniform, we honor your selfless service to the nation. To our loved ones who endure the many difficulties that come with being part of the Marine family, I want to extend my sincerest thanks for all you have done and all you continue to do. Happy 235th birthday, Marines. Semper Fidelis, General John F. Amos, Commandant of the Marine Corps.
Hi, this is Patty Westberg from the Santa Barbara Navy League. We are at the Pierre Claesson's annual military ball at the Fess Parker Doubletree Resort in Santa Barbara, California. And next to me I have Colonel Paul Dupre, and he has been a U.S. Marine Corps veteran for a lot of years. Colonel Dupre, can you tell me about the 3 most important battles you were in World War II?
The most intense battle of World War II was when the 2nd Marine Division landed on an atoll called Tarawa in the Gilbert Islands, practically right astride the equator. And I can remember that when our enemies laid in the sun for some time, they bloated, and I could see bubbles blipping out of their bullet holes. Saipan was a bad battle. Guadalcanal was bad enough.
What was your role in those battles?
In the land on Guadalcanal, I was still enlisted. I recommended for a battlefield commission on Guadalcanal. Really, it didn't come through until we got to New Zealand about 2 months later.
Where else did you serve in World War II? You said Guadalcanal.
Oh yeah, we and our Navy brought us to every one of them. And these coxswains who ran those ships to the shore with incoming Japanese artillery fire got us into the beaches, dropped their bow ramps, and out we went. The submarines were in the war for less than 1 minute. They were hit as soon as they ran off the front of the bow ramp. But after Guadalcanal, we went to hit Tarawa, as I mentioned a moment ago. And from there, we went to Saipan. Landed on Saipan on my birthday. And I always managed, I don't know why, to get into the first wave. I was in the third boat wave at Saipan, and in the first wave again at Tinian.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, Tinian was, we had it very fortunate there. We didn't have as much initial opposition in the landing as we had at other islands we landed at. By the time of the end of the Tinian operation,
yes,
and I must say a word for our Seabees, they turned Tinian in a veritable city, and they built, I think, 5 airfields there. And a year later, that's where the Air Force aircraft carrier, the Enola Gay, took off to drop the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I was evacuated from Tinian, went back to Saipan that we had just secured, and then they put me aboard a hospital ship, and I was very much afraid that a hospital ship ran with the lights on at night. And they had to give me some sort of a sedative. I knew a Japanese would come along and lay 2 or 3 torpedoes in the side of that ship.
So if the ship was running with its lights on at night, then you would be easily detectable by the enemy, correct?
Oh, yes.
And that's why you were concerned about that.
Very much so.
That's understandable. What's the most valuable lesson you learned from fighting these different battles in World War II that you live or that you carry on to today? What lesson did you learn the most?
Oh, I don't know if anyone was more important or particular than the others. You had to shoot him before he shot you. That was the main thought. And we went through some very hard times, in fact, in Guadalcanal. And then on D+2 at Guadalcanal, the Japanese came down this Solomon Island chain and took our Navy by surprise and sunk 4 cruisers in less than an hour of naval surface bombardment. We lost the Argonne, the Quincy, and the Australian cruiser that was operating with us, the Canberra, but we lost the Vincennes, Astoria, and the Argonne. All went to the bottom.
It's amazing. Colonel, it's been a pleasure speaking with you this evening. You are an incredible war hero, and it's a pleasure having you here at the Military Ball in Santa Barbara for the Pierre Claessens Foundation, the library and the museum that they have up here celebrating the greatest generation ever, the World War II veterans from this great country that protected us and continue to protect our freedoms to this day. Colonel Dupre is a staple in Ventura County. He comes to all of our military events at Naval Base Ventura County. I've had the pleasure of knowing this wonderful gentleman since 1999 at the first CB ball I attended here, 11 years ago. Thank you for your time. And on behalf of Rob, myself, Captain Rob Westberg, and myself, I'd like to present you with a little memento. Colonel Dupre was at the air show with us in August at Naval Base Ventura County, and this is a little memento from that air show. Colonel.
Can we open it now?
Yes, please. I think he's going to like this. It is a picture. Hey, you like that?
With my favorite girlfriend.
This is a picture from the 2010 air show at Point Mugu, Naval Base Ventura County, and this picture of myself and Colonel Dupre. Something that you can always remember me by.
I was privileged to be able to serve my country in 4 shooting events where I earned 2 Purple Hearts.
Thank you, Colonel. Hello,
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's Patty Westberg. Thank you so much. Reporting from the Fess Parker Doubletree Hotel, beautiful Santa Barbara, California.
Professor Perry was an enlisted man in the Army Corps of Engineers and served in the U.S. Army occupation in Japan. He joined the Reserve Officer Training Corps in 1948 and was a second lieutenant in the Army Reserves from 1950 to 1955. Professor Perry was the 19th Secretary of Defense for the United States, serving from February 1994 to January 1997. He has received a number of awards, including the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the Department of Defense Distinguished Service Medal, and the National Defense Industrial Association Eisenhower Gold Medal, and numerous others, and I won't read them all. They're just numerous. He received a Bachelor of Science and Master of Science from Stanford University and a PhD from Penn State, all in mathematics. It is a great pleasure that I now introduce a great American. Dr. Perry, the microphone is yours.
I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Tonight I'm going to talk to you about the less traveled road and why it has made all the difference in my life. I'm going to start my journey with World War II. I remember Pearl Harbor Day as vividly as if it had happened yesterday. I had just turned 14. And I remember not only where I was and what I was doing, but I remember exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking that we were in for a long, difficult war. But from my 14-year-old perspective, I was afraid that the war wouldn't be long enough. That sounds like a crazy reaction, but you must understand that I wanted to be a part of that war. More than anything, I wanted to join the Air Corps and become a pilot. After a few months training, I was sent to be a part of the Army of Occupation in Japan. On my first visit to Tokyo, just 1 year after the war had ended, I found that it was still a shattered city, not yet having recovered from the fire bombings of the war. I was only in Tokyo 1 month, and then my ship was sent to Okinawa, which is the scene of the last great battle of World War II. Never shall I forget the devastation I saw when my ship landed at Naha, the capital city of Okinawa. That was a city that once had several 100,000 inhabitants. But when we landed, not a building was standing. The entire city had been destroyed. The people who had survived were living in the rubble of what used to be buildings. The Japanese army defending Okinawa had 100,000 men at the beginning of the battle, of whom only a few thousand surrendered. The rest all died in battle or committed suicide. The defense of Okinawa was unbelievably fierce, and the results devastating. This battle was seen by the U.S. military as a precursor to what would happen when they invaded Japan. As a result, the Army forecast that this invasion could result in 1 million American casualties and many millions of Japanese. It was in the face of that estimate that the decision was made to drop the atomic bomb. As deadly as the atomic bomb was, its use probably spared the lives of millions, Americans and Japanese alike. But in January of 1977, I got a fateful call from Washington to put me on another road. I was asked to come back to Washington to be the Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering. That was the most dangerous period of the Cold War. The Red Army at the time was 3 times the size of the American Army, and by 1977 they'd reached parity in nuclear weapons. We all felt that we were facing a window of vulnerability because of that, and Secretary Brown asked me to do whatever I could do using American advantage in technology to help offset this numerical superiority of the Soviet Union. So we developed the stealth airplanes, the F-117 and the B-2, developed smart bombs, global positioning satellite, and something called ARPANET in those days, now called the Internet. In January of '93, I got another fateful phone call from Washington, asking me to come back to Washington to be this Deputy Secretary of Defense. I was very reluctant to take that job. I did not want to leave my friends, my home, the university, my teaching, and to be perfectly candid, some very valuable stock options. But after much discussion with my wife, we finally decided yes, sold the home and moved to Washington, and setting off on still another, less traveled road. I accepted the President's offer. The Washington Post responded to the announcement by running an article observing that I was soft-spoken and humble, and questioning whether those were the right personality traits for the job of the Secretary of Defense. They were simply reflecting the well-known fact that in Washington, those who travel the high road of humility are never bothered by heavy traffic. As a result of the Post article, my confirmation hearing was a surreal experience. Senator Byrd, instead of asking me questions about my views on defense issues, took off on the Washington Post article. He observed that George Washington was humble, that Robert E. Lee was humble, and yes, that Jesus was humble. So he concluded my humility ought to be an asset. He did concede, however, that in his 40 years in the Senate, he had never before seen humility in a cabinet officer. Well, after Senator Byrd's ringing endorsement, the other senators fell in line and confirmed me as secretary by a vote of 98-0. That unanimous vote was the high point of my experience with the Congress. After that, it was all downhill. But the real aspects of the job were enormously fulfilling. The top priority was dealing with the nuclear legacy of the Cold War, and we succeeded during my term in office of dismantling 8,000 nuclear weapons in the former Soviet Union and the United States. I left the job in 1997 with a real sense of accomplishment. After the farewell parade, the President presented me with the Medal of Freedom. But even more important to me was an award I received that day from the senior enlisted personnel, an award they had never before given. And on that award it said, "You have done more for the enlisted personnel than any other secretary in history." In 2006, George Shultz, Henry Kissinger, Sam Nunn, and I concerned about the increasing dangers of nuclear terrorism. and we decided to hold a workshop at Stanford on the 20th anniversary of the Reykjavik Summit. That was a summit at which President Reagan and President Gorbachev actually discussed eliminating nuclear weapons. After that workshop, we wrote an op-ed which said, pointing out the dangers of nuclear weapon and asking to consider moving back to the idea of eliminating nuclear weapons. We had a major reaction all around the world. All of this was encouraging, but it was all unofficial. The real action had to be taken by governments, and to that point, no government action had been taken. And then a miracle happened. In April of 2009, in the beautiful old world capital of Prague, President Obama stood up and said, "I state clearly and with conviction America's commitment to seek the peace and security of the world without nuclear weapons." Since that talk, I've decided to devote the balance of my career to working towards that goal. So I have started traveling on one more, less traveled road. When friends and family ask me why I'm doing this, instead of settling down to enjoy retirement, I tell them that I believe that time is not on our side, and that having helped build this Cold War nuclear arsenal, I knew better than most how to dismantle it. I'm going to end my talk the same way I started it, by quoting Robert Frost. "The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and mouths to go before I sleep, and mouths to go before I sleep." Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Perry.
Pleasure having you, sir.